2. Money and centralization of power. One of the most dangerous fallacies which today plagues conservatism is Satanism as a philosophy of history. It's one thing to believe in the reality of conspiracies, but it is entirely a different proposition to assert that conspiracies govern and destine history. Only an impersonalistic view of history will logically deny the reality of conspiracies, but to hand over the determination of history to conspiracies is to posit the ultimacy of evil and its omnipotence. History is not determined by international bankers, but by the sovereign and triune God. History moves not in terms of the plans, plots, and wills of men, but in terms of the absolute laws of God. And one sphere of such laws is economics. To deny the supremacy of God and His law over the world of money is to assert the power and ultimacy of evil, and to be guilty of Satanism. Because the world is under God's law, certain consequences pursue every attempt by men to control money in order to centralize power. It is true, first of all, that since money is the lifeblood of economics, a managed money means a managed economy. Its consequence is always socialism. Whenever and wherever men strive to centralize power in order to control it, they will then seek a managed money. This men have constantly sought to do, to gain power, and there is no likelihood that sinful man will cease to do so. Any realistic appraisal of man's nature will compel the conviction that few things are more conducive to the destruction of liberty than managed money. A sound money policy is a prerequisite of liberty. As Rist observed, "We shall save sound money or we shall cease to be free." Second, this fact requires that we see the alternatives clearly and without illusion. The alternative is hard money or a hard dictatorship. Gold and silver, hard money, are conducive to economic stability and prosperity. Managed money spells controls leading to dictatorships and to economic chaos and collapse. Managed money means a progressive loss of liberty. The thesis of the socialists is that scientific management and controls produce far more benefits for man than does liberty. The welfare of man is seen as the purpose of money management, but the pseudo-conservatives who call for social credit money, government-issued paper notes, hold to an identical belief. They want benevolent money managers guided by law to manage money, and therefore all men, since all men are economically governed by money, to manage money is to manage or control men in the name of the general welfare of all. Between the two systems, there is only a difference of managers. Both systems are totalitarian and hostile to economic liberty. A dictator who does not manage money, who retains free gold and silver coinage, and rejects a paper media, is unavoidably a man of exceedingly limited powers. Apart from the vote, the subjects have vast areas of liberty. Because the state, lacking a managed money, remains small, the political power of such a dictator would remain very small. Accordingly, the management of money becomes the necessary ingredient of totalitarian power and control. Money, of course, is managed in a variety of ways other than debasing or counterfeiting coinage or circulating media. As the central government progressively debauches and inflates the currency, it gains more power. As the source of the newly printed money, the central government is always in the market with the most and the cheapest money. It can outbid and outbuy private citizens and corporations, as well as being able to control their activities. As the inflation becomes dangerous, the central government increases its expenditures, both to increase its power and to continue the inflationary boom that passes for prosperity. On the other hand, it decries inflation and seeks to limit by controls and taxation the purchasing power of the people. It turns to the fatal course of repressing inflation instead of removing its causes. The state then begins to abuse the people who are the victims instead of admitting its own guilt as the money manager. The people are assured that the dollar is strong, but they are warned that their spending can weaken it. Reassurances are issued concerning the national debt by agencies of the state, and the harsh realities are sickled o'er with the pale cast of thought. Hamlet 3:1. Ostensibly to remedy the situation, taxes are increased to prevent further inflation, although the additional taxes only further the centralizing power of the state. The idea of curbing inflation by taxation has been termed childish by Boardman, who writes, "One lawmaker put it this way: cost of living will go up about 5% this year, either in taxes or inflation, so taxes will be hiked to block inflation in the public interest. If you can stand it, I hope you will examine that statement closely, since it ignores the fact that every increase in taxes is finally added to the cost of goods and services. The truth of the matter is that every increase in taxes doubles the inflationary cycle." In the United States in 1960, the total money, including time deposits, was $250 billion. In 1966, it was $317 billion. The total gold in the United States in 1960 was $25 billion. In 1966, it was $13 billion. This tells the story of inflation, and the responsibility for this situation is with the central government and its money management. Like it or not, when a people choose to accept money management, they have thereby chosen, in the place of hard money, a hard dictatorship, although it may take some years for their choice to come home to them. Moreover, money managers become possible and thrive when there are people who are ready and willing to be managed in exchange for a subsidy from the public treasury. The subsidy can be a federal contract, loan, subsidy, or welfare grants, but in every form, it is a control, and its end result is socialism. Since irredeemable currency is a tool of socialists, communists, and government dictators of other varieties, the gates have been opened since 1933 to such a form of government in this country. The power of the ballot becomes the power of those who seek sustenance from the public treasury. Third, debased and counterfeit money leads not only to the centralization of power and money, but to all forms of wealth. The power to manage money is also the power to confiscate wealth. A progressive consequence of money management is the concentration and centralization of wealth. Socialism does not eliminate millionaires, it creates a new kind of millionaire, one whose money comes from manipulation of status power. There are more millionaires in the USSR today than under the Tsars, but there is no real middle class, and the lower classes are radically poorer. Moreover, none of the Soviet millionaires has any independent wealth. It is always subject to confiscation by the states whose favours made it possible. Money management is confiscation of private wealth by the state. The excuses given are the public welfare, human need, democracy, and equality, but the reality is always confiscation. The one real beneficiary is the state. Money management, moreover, involves not only the confiscation of wealth and of economic liberty, but of political liberty as well. The state grows in power and is beyond the control of the people. As Spar has noted, we should not fail to understand that spending by our national government is out of control of Congress and of our people. The most serious aspect of this state of affairs is that the people of this nation have lost it because they were deprived of it when an unredeemable currency was thrust upon them in 1933. When a people lose control of the public purse, they lose control of their central government. As the consequences of money management began to develop into the threats of a runaway inflation, the central government only increases its spending and confiscation while now trying to halt the easy money policy it had earlier fostered for the citizenry. A tighter money policy becomes necessary for the people. Controls begin to appear, first of prices for heavy industry and then of other areas. Appeals are made to Labour for voluntary wages controls, a break on wage demands as Johnson did in early May 1966. The voluntary controls, of course, are futile because inflation and its root cause, managed money, not only rob the people of their economic liberties, but also create in them an appetite for more of the spurious prosperity of inflation. The reaction of Walter Reuther to the economic crisis was a further demand. Walter Reuther yesterday spurred his 1.4 million member United Auto Workers Union to strive for a society of both bread and roses. All the same, the federal government, by mid-1966, was beginning to think seriously of controls. Federal Reserve Board's chairman, William M. Martin, favoured controls in addressing a congressional hearing. The administration was also considering using the Vietnam War escalation as a reason for wartime controls. The federal government, in awareness of the dangers of dictatorship, is at times both hesitant and ready for such controls, with the political administration fearful usually, and the bureaucracy ready. But the pressure for controls comes also from the people, who believe that the answer to a state-created crisis is more statist action. Thus, savings and loan men and builders were, by June 1966, also demanding controls to save their own areas of activity. The threat of further inflation creates crises for businessmen and investors. Because of money management, their wealth and property is increasingly insecure. Interest rates rise and credit tightens as people begin to look around desperately for a safe refuge for their money. The effect on the stock market is immediate. It reflects the uncertainty of the people and the insecurity of money. The central government seeks, meanwhile, to continue its self-justification by speaking of high-sounding welfare causes. Ostensibly, wealth is to be redistributed. According to President L.B. Johnson, January the 15th, 1964, we're going to try to take all of the money that we think is unnecessarily being spent and take it from the haves and give it to the have-nots that need it so much. The actual result of such a program is not the redistribution of wealth to the poor, but the confiscation of it by the state. Every proposed corrective to the growing economic crisis is a form of further money management, and both devaluation and inflation are hidden taxes on the people and further methods of confiscation. By devaluation, the state increases the value of its gold and silver holdings, but decreases the value of the paper money holdings of the people. By inflation, the value of the paper money is also decreased. Irrespective of the device used, money management produces centralization and confiscation of money and wealth. Fourth, there is, however, another factor at work as centralization increases, and this is economic fragmentation. Money management produces progressively worthless money together with concentration of power. Concentration breeds further concentration as the power structure strives steadily for a consolidation of power. Money management leads to political internationalism, therefore, but it also creates economic nationalism and fragmentation. Weak money does not flow easily across borders, and the more it is debased, the weaker its flow. The result is a collapse of the economic internationalism which gold and silver foster. The professed political internationalism progressively fumbles and falls over the harsh realities of economic fragmentation and nationalism. But this is not all. As power and money management pass to the central government, hard money flows downward. The reaction of people to the progressive confiscation is to hoard gold and silver. Palyi has commented on Greek hoarding. The average Greek views this real estate and housing boom as part and parcel of the overall inflation trend and tries to protect himself by hoarding gold. The private gold holdings of the Greek people are estimated at some $500 million. That is, at more than $45 on the average for every man, woman, and child. Hoarding, which simply means saving, is even more marked in Western Europe and is in growing evidence in the United States. The hunger for gold in Asia, notably India, is very great. Gold coins sell in every time of growing money management at an increasing premium over their gold content. A shaky stock market adds to this trend. One result of all this is that many European investors have taken their money out of the market and invested in gold instead. As a result, the stock market declines further. All across the continent, when a bank customer seeks to cash travelers' checks, he frequently finds himself in a line of gold-buying citizens. In many parts of the world, the age-old reaction to money management is to hoard and bury gold for the time of freedom. From time to time, such long-buried hoards come to light. Another current consequence is a renewal of interest in mining shares. In the US, the reaction has been varied, including renewed interest in mining and the private accumulation of gold. Significantly, a long list of foreign countries drained gold from the US in the first quarter, the Treasury announced, but it said sales to domestic users slightly exceeded the outflow to foreigners. All over the world, new gold was flowing into private channels rather than to state hands. Private demand for gold last year reached an unprecedented total of $1,585 million, up $465 million from 1964, while the total available for governmental use dropped by $325 million to $400 million. As a result of these and other factors, centralization is self-defeating ultimately. The increased power which money management breeds is fraudulent power in that it cannot stand the test of freedom and competition. The economy created by managed money leads to a progressive distrust which causes hard money to flow downward and to be hoarded. The paper money is spent more readily and the hard money held. With the growing political and economic concentration of power in Washington, gold and silver have moved away from the US Treasury. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, has seen a similar flow outwards and downward. Over its whole history, the fund has gold receipts of $4.2 billion from subscription payments, repurchases, and charges. The fund has used $1.1 billion of gold to replenish its holdings of currencies, of which $500 million was used for this purpose in 1961, leaving $3.1 billion. Of this, the fund has invested $800 million, the remainder of $2.3 billion being the fund's present gold holdings. Although the United States, faced with a growing loss of confidence in the dollar, is ready to go into a world currency, the resistance to this is very great. The one consequence would be to pass on the weakness of such currencies as the dollar and the pound to all other currencies, and other countries are only ready to profit by the strength, not share in the decline or collapse of a foreign currency. Whether a world currency is adopted or not, the process of economic fragmentation is underway. Hoarding is a vote of no confidence in the prevailing official currency, and the votes of no confidence by nations for other currencies and by citizens for their own is everywhere on the increase. The decline of currencies has, in most cases, passed the point of no return. The central states and their money managers are not about to surrender their vast powers, but seek rather to increase them. But because the world is under God's law, the nemesis of this power is that its concentration speeds its own destruction. We are supposedly on the threshold of a great era of internationalism, when in actuality we are witnessing an era of economic nationalism and fragmentation. And the real breakdown is yet to come. The crisis will be severe, but the world will remain, as always, under God's law.